Welcome back to today's financial soiree, the second part of today's financial soiree. Our core financial insight for this evening would be giving and tithing. And this is the approach that I'm going to be taking. We're going to, the format that we are going to use, I'm going to talk about why we need to give or tithe, what we need to tithe on, how we go about tithing, where and to whom we tithe, and when we tithe. I'm going to do it in this context. I'm going to start off generally in terms of giving, and then seamlessly I'm going to blend it into the tithe itself. All right? So let's go here. So why do we have to tithe in a general context? Why do we have to give generally? Well, there are several reasons. The first one is because of our humanity. I read somewhere that if you get 3 meals a day, if you have clean drinking water, and if you have shelter, that means you're not homeless, okay? Whether your dwelling is very humble or very palatial, if you have 3 meals a day, if you have clean drinking water, and if you have shelter, then you represent 15% of the 7 billion people in the world, which means this, that the other 85% either are not getting 3 meals a day, do not have access to clean drinking water, and do not have shelter, or combination of all three, or combination of those. Okay? So because of our humanity, because we are the 15% who are privileged, especially those of us in North America, in Europe, and in developed countries, we must not forget the other 85%, okay, who do not have these things. And that's one of the reasons why you have to be giving. The second reason is because of gratitude. Those of us who are born in North America, or who have immigrated here, or in countries where we are part of that 15%, it is not based on merit. Okay? It's an accident of birth. We just happen to be born there, right? So we want to be very grateful for being born where we are born, having what we have, and blessed with what we have. And as a result of that, again, out of gratitude, we want to be giving. The third reason is to control greed, because if if you don't give away what you don't need, there's a tendency to hoard things. There's a movie called Wall Street. It's an old movie, and one of the main actors was Michael Douglas. And there was a remake of this movie recently. The first one was in the 70s, and they remade this movie. And I was watching it on Netflix a couple of months ago. And there was a part in that movie where he, the senior financial investment guy, was training someone else. And the younger guy asked him, "What's your number?" So he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, everybody has to have a number. Like we keep building wealth until at some point we say enough. I have to move on. I have enough. I move on." So the older investment advisor, who was Michael Douglas, looked at him, and said, "My number is more. M-O-R-E, more. There's no number. I just want more and more and more." So to control greed, right? So because if you have everything that you need, then if you are not giving it away, then it becomes purposeless. And so an example would be Warren Buffett, okay, one of the richest men in the world, and he made his money through investing. Okay, if you look at the Forbes list of billionaires that comes up every year, it used to be only American, now it's become worldwide. In America, there's about 1,700 billionaires in the world. Okay, half of them are in the U.S. And and Warren Buffett is the only one in that list who made his money through investments, by buying, through investing. Everybody else made it through successful companies. Their companies just took off, right? So after about 40 years, in 2006, Warren Buffett, who was 75 years old at that time, decided, that he's won this game. To him, it's just a game. It's a scorecard, and he won. Okay? And so in 2006, he gave away 99% of his wealth. Okay? In the GPS process, in step number 10, we talk about giving away 90% of your income. He gave away 99% of his wealth. Okay? And the reason he gave it away is because he said, there are people in the world who need it more than me. You follow? So he gave away 99, and mainly it went to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to help, whose main focus is to eliminate malaria and AIDS in Africa. And so it's a good cause. So control greed, because otherwise we lose perspective, and we get more and more stuff because we're not giving it away. We feel better. You go to bed at night better knowing that as a citizen of the world, you did your part. Okay? No one is asking you to shoulder all the problems of the world. All we're saying is, look, without affecting your lifestyle, what you don't need, give it away. Okay? Because you're not going to take it with you. All right? So this is why you have to give in a general sense. So what do you give? You can give of your wealth, like Warren Buffett. You can give out of your wealth. Now, incidentally, that happened in 2006, and I followed up the story in 2009. In Fortune magazine, I saw Warren Buffett with Bill and Melinda Gates on the front cover 3 years later. And I was curious, and I read the article. And the article said Warren Buffett, that year in 2009, 3 years after he gave away 99% of his wealth, in 2009, when the new list of the billionaires was published, he challenged the American billionaires, okay, to give away 50% of their wealth. And in the article, he said this. He said, 3 years ago, I gave 99% of my wealth away. Okay? And he said, I'm not asking you to give 99% of your wealth, just 50%. Because he said, even after giving away 99% of my wealth, my lifestyle wasn't affected. Okay? He said, I still travel by private jet. My family has everything that they need. He said, there's just so much. Okay? So he was challenging them to do the same. So you can give out of your wealth, which is what he's doing. Most of us, ordinary people, would give out of our income, okay, if you don't have wealth. Okay? And as a financial advisor, advising the masses, I always encourage giving out of, while you're living, giving out of income, and then in estate planning, when you're passing on, giving out of your wealth. Okay? We encourage that to build eternal treasures. Okay, so you give out of your income, you give out of your wealth, you give as much as you can, again, without affecting your lifestyle. Follow? You don't want to deprive yourself, so eat as much as you want, buy as big as the house you want, drive as many cars as you want, but beyond that, give it away. Okay, whatever your pleasure is. All right, how much do you give? How do you give? You give from the top, because if you wait until you have the money, whether you're giving, especially when you're giving from your income, you may never have it. Okay, so give from the top, right from the top. Give regularly, and give increasingly. Because the world, you are just helping the world when you do that, those who are in need in the world. So who do you give and where do you give? Pick a cause or a charity. Nowadays, online, you can go online. Most charities, when you go to their website, right online, they have a donate button, okay, where you can donate and they can take the money out of your credit card, out of your debit account, PayPal account, whatever, but it can be done. So there are also places where a website has centralized all the charities. For instance, in Canada or in Nova Scotia, by region or by affiliation. So you can go there and find, for instance, if it's religious, you can find all the Christian ones, okay? Or if it's by illnesses, by various illnesses. So just Google, and you'll be able to find the cause or charity that that's closest to you, or that means something to you. So pick a cause or a charity, and that's who you will give to. That is how, in a general sense, okay, why as a citizen of the world you should be giving, how you should be giving, how much you should be giving, and where you should be giving it to. Okay. So what if you are a Christian? Okay. Why should you be giving? Okay, now so let's look at it from a Christian perspective. Why should you be giving if you're a Christian? Why should you be? Our giving is very specific, and my focus here is on the tithe, okay? And a tithe, right from the get-go, let me just clarify it for you. A tithe is 1/10, okay? The word tithe means 1/10. So why do we have, and the process of, of giving 1/10 is called tithing. This is what we're talking about here, okay? And why do we have to tithe? First of all, in the Word of God, in Deuteronomy 14:23, and I like the version of the Living Bible, where it says this: the purpose of tithing is to teach you to always put God first in your life. Okay? It doesn't say it more. I think it says it very, very well. Okay? The purpose of tithing is to teach you to always put God first in your life. Okay? Deuteronomy 14:23. The second reason why we tithe is because it all belongs to God. Okay? One of the 5 biblical principles on which the GPS process is based on is we say that we are stewards, not owners of all the resources that God has entrusted us with. Okay? And so this underscores that. So if you go to Psalm 24:1, and in the King James Version, it says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and all that dwell therein. Okay, so everything belongs to God. Now there are other verses that speak to that. Here's another one, Psalm 50, verses 9 to 12. It goes like this, where God, through the psalmist, is saying this: I have no need of a bull from your stall, or of goats from your pens. For every animal of the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird in the mountains, and all the creatures of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, because the world is mine and everything that is in it. This is God saying, okay, that everything belongs to Him to start with. Another one that speaks to that is Haggai 2:8, where God says, the silver is mine and the gold is mine. Okay? Another one is 1 Corinthians 4:7b. When I say A and B, I mean it's a verse, and there's 2 parts to the verse. This is the latter part of 1 Corinthians 4:7b. And the NLT, the New Living Translation version, goes like this. Everything that you have comes from God. Okay? It's a gift from God. And if you know that everything that you have is a gift from God, why boast that that anything belongs to you? Okay? This is 1 Corinthians 4:7b. All right. Now, again, like I said, we are stewards. The reason why we give is we are managers, we are stewards. We are managing what God has given us to manage during our time on the planet. And that comes from the parable of the talents in Matthew 25:14, where it says that, and it'll be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. Okay, when God is talking about the kingdom of God. All right. Another reason is that we're going to be held accountable. Again, coming to the parable of the 10 talents, where in Matthew 25:19 it says, after a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. Okay, Matthew 25 is the parable of the 10 talents. If you just to refresh you, it's a story of a master who goes on a journey, calls his servants, and delegates his property to them. And then he comes back and asks for an accounting. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent. And he expected 100% return. Okay, and he didn't mince words about the guy who did not give him a good return on his investment, on his resources. So that's going to be accountability. The next reason why we have to tithe as Christians is because in Leviticus 27:30. It says that the tithe is holy, and it goes like this, that verse. It says, a tithe from the land is holy to the Lord, whether fruit from the soil, or grain, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the trees. It is holy to God. Now, you want to pay attention to that, because whenever God says something is holy, okay, you don't want to be messing with it. Okay? God says that the tithe is holy, so you don't want to be fooling around with it. Okay? You don't want to take it lightly. Another reason is you want to avoid the curse, because in Malachi chapter 3 verse 9 it says this: you are under a curse, the whole nation of you, okay, because you did not tithe. Okay, he was making reference to tithe and offerings. So you want to be avoiding the curse. And in Malachi, I want to go back one verse. I'm missing a verse there. After the Holy Leviticus, there should be Malachi 3:8, and the caption should have read it. I made a change somewhere else, but I'll just speak to it. So after holy, after we say that the reason why you have to tithe is because it's holy, in Leviticus 27:30, the next one should be where it says that if you don't tithe, you are robbing God, and that comes from Malachi 3:8, which goes like this. Malachi the prophet God is speaking through Malachi, and God says, "Will a man rob God? Yet you are robbing me." Okay. So another reason why you want to tithe is because not tithing is equivalent to robbing God. Okay, and you don't want to be in a position where you're robbing God. That is followed by Malachi 3:9, which says, "You are under a curse, the whole nation of you, because you're robbing me. You're robbing me through the tithes and offering." Okay? And in Malachi 3:10 and 11, God says that, after he admonishes, the people of Israel that you're robbing me because you're not tithing, and you're under a curse because you're not tithing, then he follows it up in verses 10 and 11 with a promise. In verse 10 he says this, and the Lord actually said this, he says, "Test me in this, and see if I will not open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that you will not have room enough for it." Okay? So that's verse 10, and in verse 11 he takes it one step further and he says, "I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes." The devourer is Satan. Okay? And he says, "I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, so that he does not destroy the fruit of the ground, and that your vines do not cast their fruit before the time." That means he says, of course in those days it was agrarian society, so he's saying the work of your hand, the labor, okay, everything that you're trying to achieve, okay, I will make sure that it's successful. Okay, that many times, a lot of things happen in the spiritual realm. We don't know why, things are not happening the way you intended them, but it could be that Satan had something to do with it. Okay? As in the case of Job. Okay? Job didn't do anything wrong, and yet everything got messed up, and there was something happening in the spiritual realm. And here God says, "I will intervene. I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes." Okay? So there are, all these reasons why you should be tithing, right? And finally, Proverbs 3:9 and 10 from the New Century Version, that goes like this. It says, "Honor the Lord with your wealth and the first fruits from all your crops. Then your barns will be full and your wine barrels will overflow with new wine." Okay, again putting it in context, in our society today we don't have wine barrels and we don't have barns, okay? But in that agrarian society that was important, that was their wealth, okay? That was the source of their income. So God is saying there, he says, "Honor the Lord with your wealth and the first fruits from all of your crops. Okay? And your barns will be full and your wine barrels will overflow with new wine." Okay? So he's promising you prosperity if you tithe, right? So there's a lot of reasons. I think, if you pick any one of them, ample reason to not, take this lightly. So whether you got 1 talent or you got, 5 talents, make sure that you tithe, okay? It doesn't matter. It's what you're saying, as in Deuteronomy 14:23, you're saying to God, "I'm putting you first, okay? Before my needs, before I take care of my pleasure, before I pay my obligations, I take care of you first, I honor you, because God, I'm trusting that, in return you're going to bless me, okay? And whenever you please God, He blesses you, okay? This is what He does. All right, so this is why we tithe as Christians. So what do we tithe on? In Malachi 3:10, it says this, "Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse." Okay? The whole tithe. Now, since we've established that a tithe is 1/10, when he says bring the whole tithe, that means we're saying the whole 10%. Not 8, not 9, not 7, not 6, or whatever you feel like. Okay? 10%. And it's not difficult. I am on commission income, so every week when my commissions come in, okay, the first thing I make note of is what is the amount that comes in. Okay? Even roughly, I always round off to the next highest number, okay? Because to me the tithe is very serious. You follow? So that by Sunday I can tell my wife, because my wife cuts out the check, how much to give. Okay? You don't want to be fooling around with this. Okay? So round it up higher, but never lower, and you'll see why a bit later. So the whole tithe, okay, so 10% of your gross income, whatever your income is, right? Then in Proverbs 3:9 from the NIV, it says, honor the Lord with your wealth and the first fruit from all your crops. Now again, we are not in an agrarian society, but here, ever so often, we come into windfalls. We all have a source of income. Those of us who are working, employed or self-employed, or retirees, you've got a source of income. So you tithe on that. But ever so often, we get windfalls. Okay? There's gifts. We might win some money somewhere in a draw or something. Okay? We might inherit money. Okay? Whenever you have first fruits, okay? Anytime money comes into your hands, right? First fruits. Okay? In the agrarian society, it was the crops that come in. Whenever something comes into, when the Lord blesses you, tithe on it. Okay? It's not just your income, everything that comes into your hand. Okay? Now, when our kids were growing up, we taught them like this. Okay? You want to go, whenever you have birthday money or whatever, you go and work or what, you tithe on it. Okay? You teach them to do it, and you want to teach your kids to do the same thing too. All right. So what you tithe on the whole tithe. It means 10%, not 8, not 9, 8, 7, 6, or whatever you feel like. You tithe on your first with any windfalls that come in outside of your income, right? Now, in the Bible, tithing is not something new, okay? No, if you read the book of Genesis, and if you study biblical timelines, the earliest events in the book of Genesis occurred between 2200 BC and 1600 BC, okay? So since we are in 2013 now, the events that occurred in Genesis, where these two stories come in about Abraham and Moses, occurred about, 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, okay? And in Genesis 14:20, in Genesis chapter 14, just to refresh you on the story, there was a war between kings in the area. And Abram, he wasn't Abraham at that time, his name was still Abram. God hasn't changed his name yet. Abram was living in one area, and his nephew Lot, who had moved away from him, was living in Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay? And there was a fight between 5 kings and 4 kings, and finally, all said and done, the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah were defeated. And the other 4 kings, when they defeated them, they looted their cities, and they took Lot and all their goods with them. Okay? And somebody came and told Abram that your nephew Lot has been taken. So Abram took 318 trained men, okay, and he pursued them. Okay? I don't know if you're familiar with Israel. Beersheba is closer to Egypt, and Dan is closer to Syria. Okay? It's quite a span. So he pursued them from Beersheba all the way up to Dan, okay, and even past Damascus. And he recaptured a lot, and he recovered all the belongings. And in verse 14:20, it said that after he recovered, he worshipped God. He built an altar and he worshipped God, and he gave the Lord 1/10 of everything that he had. So this is something that has been going on for a long time. This is not new. Okay, tithing. 4,000 years ago, Abraham did it. Similarly, another model that has been set for us is Jacob. And again, this comes from Genesis 28. The story again is Jacob, Esau. Jacob steals Esau's blessing, and Esau is mad at him. And so Isaac tells Jacob, go to your uncle Laban's place, where your mother comes from. And so as he was going there, and this in those days it's all you're walking or you're traveling on donkeys and camels, so it's not supersonic flight. And so after he had to break journey at sunset, and that night he had a dream, okay? And in that dream he saw angels going up and down on a flight of stairs to heaven. And the next morning when he got up, he said, this place must be holy because I encountered God here. He called it Bethel, and he built a pillar there. And in verse 28, in verse 15, God promised him that God was going to take care of him and bring him back to this place, because he says you're going to flourish here, you're going to go north, south, east, west, and I'm going to watch over you. And in verse 28, 22, Jacob says, God, if you're going to do all of that for me, okay, you're going to be my God, And if everything that you give me, I'm going to give you 1/10. Okay? So again, we see the occurrence of the tithe there. So we've got a few models in the Bible to show us that. All right, moving on. So how do we tithe? We should tithe cheerfully. In 2 Corinthians 9:7, it says this: every person should give what he or she has decided in his heart to give, okay, not reluctantly or under compulsion, because God loves a cheerful giver. Although it's an obligation, okay, but He wants you to do this cheerfully. Okay? He don't want you to do this under compulsion or reluctantly. Oh, you know what I'm saying? You know, so do it. And then the second way to give is also to give generously. And why? Because in Luke 6:38, the Lord Himself says, "Give, and it'll be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap." Okay? And then He says, with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Okay? So when you're giving to God, don't be cutting corners, always be rounding up, not down. Okay? Always be giving from the gross, not the net. I get these conversations because we are financial advisors, and no reflection on them because they are looking for direction. Sometimes people will ask, do I tithe on the gross or on the net? Okay? When people tell you that, tell them this. Do you want God to use a big scoop when He blesses you, or do you want Him to use a small scoop? You want to give Him that? Same idea, right? So give generously, and always with the caution that it must not affect your lifestyle, okay? Because you're not a good testimony if you cannot pay your bills. You're not a good testimony if you're swimming in debt, okay? We got to take care of those things, but we want to give generously, right? And you want to give from the first fruits, okay? Not from what's left over, not from the bottom part, from the top. Okay? And by doing that, you're honoring God. And again, coming back to Proverbs 3:9, honor the Lord with your wealth and the first fruits from all of your crops. So this is how you tithe, okay? So where do you tithe? In Malachi chapter 3, verse 10, verse 9, no, verse 10, that should be verse 10. It says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Okay? So the storehouse in those days were the equivalent of today's churches. Okay? The synagogues, the temple, okay? And they had storehouses. So he said, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Okay, so where do you tithe? The tithe goes to the local church. Wherever you get fed spiritually, okay, wherever you go, okay, that's where you want to be giving your local tithe. Okay? And God will use it in whichever way He sees fit through His servants there. So the final word is always with the Lord as to whether we should tithe or not, or how to tithe. And this really comes from Matthew 23:23, where the Lord was talking to the teachers of the law and the Pharisees, and He said, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you tithe from your spices, you tithe one tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have forgotten the more important aspects of the law, which is mercy, justice, and faithfulness. So He's saying to them, you are hypocrites. You tithe 1/10 of all of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have forgotten the more important matters of the law, which are faithfulness, mercy, and justice. Okay? And then He says this. He says, you should have practiced the latter, okay, meaning mercy, faithfulness, and justice, without neglecting the former. So what the Lord is saying there is, you should tithe, okay? But more than tithe, okay, don't forget mercy, faithfulness, and don't just keep to the letter of the law. The spirit of the law is important too, okay? Mercy, faithfulness, and justice. But He didn't say, not do it. He says you should have practiced the letter without neglecting the former. Okay, so He endorsed tithing, right? Now along the way, I've heard this argument that we do not have to tithe because we are under grace and not under the law, right? Because of course the new covenant, which is where the New Testament comes from, we are under a new covenant, a covenant of grace. Okay? It's unmerited favor from God that we are saved, and we'll have. It's not our righteousness, it's not our works, it's everything that God has done. So some people have argued that because we are under grace now, right, we don't have to tithe because tithe belongs to the law. Okay, Leviticus 27:30, which I alluded to earlier on, 1/10 of everything belongs to the law. So they say because it's under the law, we are under grace, it doesn't apply. I would direct them to the following verses, and again, the Lord always has the final say. So if you go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 and 18, this is what the Lord says. Now I like the King James Version because it's a bit more impactful. He says this, "Think not that I've come to destroy the law or the prophets." Okay? He said, I'm not come to destroy, but to fulfill. So in verse 17, the Lord says, "Think not that I've come to destroy the law or the prophets." I'm not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Okay? And then in verse 19, which I like from the NIV, which says this, "Anyone who breaks even the least of these commands and encourages others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of God. But anyone who practices these commands and encourages others to do the same will be called great in the kingdom of God." Okay? So again, like I said, this, if someone says, "I don't have a tithe because it's under the law and we are under grace," I'd refer them to this, because the Lord himself says, "I did not come to do away with the law, I came to give it meaning." Okay? And he says that, you not only have to do this, but if you encourage others not to do this, you'll be least in the kingdom of heaven. All right? Okay. So where are we here? So in conclusion, whether or not you're a Christian, okay, you should be giving because of your humanity. Okay? Because 85% of the people in the world do not have 3 meals a day, do not have clean drinking water, and are homeless, either all three or one of the three or a combination thereof. Okay? If you live in North America or in Europe or in one of the developed countries, chances are you are privileged. You have these privileges. Okay? So you don't want to forget the other 85%, and for that reason you should be giving. If you are a believer, a follower of Christ, then you want to be giving for all the reasons that I've expounded here. Okay? They're very powerful reasons to be giving, okay? Because God requires this of us. We honor him and it pleases him. Okay? And Jesus said, if you love me, obey my commandments. Okay? And these are his commandments. Right? So tithe, give a tithe regularly, and make it a lifestyle. Okay? So that if you're not giving, it doesn't feel right. Something is out of whack. Okay? You're not comfortable. So make it a lifestyle. All right? Now with that, I'll take any questions. Did you have any questions? Anything stuck out, April, Pam, about what I said regarding tithing?
No, I knew a lot of this, nothing new. It's kind of all in one package.
That's right.
Listening to it, because I don't know, everybody has a sector of the Bible that they kind of run to. I kind of lean more toward the financial stuff, so I kind of end up reading more financial stuff along the way in the process. So I've seen a lot of these verses. The one that I didn't really, one that was really new to me would have been the, not the Malachi one, the other one was, let's see here, which one was it? The Leviticus one. Leviticus 27:30. That was different to me, and same as Haggai. I haven't really heard of that one before. But it's interesting how all of this kind of, it all ties together. Like I said, I've read different books. Like I read Ron Blue, Dave Ramsey. There's a couple others. I've kind of read the different books and lectures on tithing and all of that, so it's kind of like no excuse now.
Especially the one that you just, that was new to you, Leviticus 27:30, where it specifically says the tithe is holy to the Lord. Okay? So that sort of really underscores it.
Yeah, I just find it interesting because, like I said, I knew about the tithing thing and a 10%, and I'm like, okay, I'll try to start off with 5% and kind of work my way up there because it was kind of initially, like you say, you don't have any money. You don't have money, but you don't have your priorities in place. But now it's so easy to write that check and keep on going.
But so, just so that, also for the listening audience, because this is going on record, you should tithe even if you're in debt, okay? Because the Lord, He controls everything. When you honor Him, He can open doors of opportunity, make a lot of things happen for you. And if you listen to stories of people who started tithing seriously, and especially as financial advisors, this is why step number 1 is tithing, okay? We get that out of the way. Make sure you're doing this, because if you're not, you're depriving yourself of God's blessings. And what happens usually is, when people start tithing, because happens in the spiritual realm, right? Because God is pleased, a lot of things happen. Suddenly more money comes in, more opportunities, and you're just further ahead of the game, okay, than you would have been if you were trying to keep it to yourself. The more you give, the more you get.
Yeah, I've like I said, when I first started, I was like, oh, how am I going to do this? So I started with 5%, and then of course you move up to 10, and then you say, just keep writing it. Don't even slow down, just go, right? But it's so hard to. It was hard to first say, hey, I'm going to do this.
Sure.
And then when I said it, I was like, okay, I know what I got to do. I'm doing it. And I said, okay, I got to work it off my net. Now I work it off my gross, and then I keep moving and moving. I said, I am in the process. I want to be there 100% at all times, but I know sometimes we don't necessarily be able to do it. But
That's right.
Just stay in that focused mind, though, to keep it
When we
going.
sit down with people and they commit to the GPS process, the first thing we address is tithing. Okay? If they're not tithing, we say, make sure you're tithing. And sometimes what happens is, they say, but how am I going to tithe? I've got all these debts. We say, do it anyway and see what happens. God always challenges, do this and see what I can do. Okay? And we encourage them to do this, notwithstanding the debt, and then see what happens. Okay? And invariably a lot happens. And what's funny also is, when I meet secular financial advisors, fellow financial advisors who are not Christian advisors, and when they ask me what it is we do, and I show them the 10 steps, they laugh, some of them. You mean you start by giving? How are you going to be financially free if you start by giving? But you see what it is? They don't understand. There's a verse in 1 Corinthians 2:14. It says that the man without the Spirit does not understand the things of God, because he does not have the Spirit of God. Okay? To understand the things of God, they have to be spiritually discerned. So that secular people don't have the Spirit of God, and so they don't understand it. Follow? Why this works. But God requires, He wants us to do this, and if we honor Him, He will honor us. Okay? And so this is very important. So notwithstanding, even if you have debt, you should do this, and then see what happens. Suddenly, you find ways to even accelerate the debt elimination process because you've honored Him. Okay? Any other questions, comments? No? All right. Thank you very much for coming. I know you had choices with your time. You chose to be here. I hope you found value in what we did. I encourage you to invite others to come, because this is a mandate from God.